Hi guys, and welcome to a new video on Sonal's life. Now, backpedaling off the last video I did, we have just had Forbidden Door. So that is the AEW and New Japan collaboration show. Well, collaboration show if you want to call it that. There is going to be loads of reviews out for this show. It was in my home country, the UK. It was in London. However, as like a New Japan person following it, like I said, there's so many reviews that you can watch, like very in-depth. There were watch-alongs and all sorts. However, I'm going to do my own review of the card from start to end, but I will be focusing, like, I'll speak about all of them because I watched the whole show. Yeah, it was from like 4:30 till like 10:30. It was very long. But I will be focusing on those featuring the New Japan talent. So yeah, it's still a very long card, so let's get going. Now, going into this, if anyone watched my last video, you'd have seen all my gripes and grievances about the lack of New Japan stars. Like, the day before the show, they suddenly announced like a flurry of New Japan stars, in the sense that there was more New Japan stars on the pre-show than the actual show. So I've got the card here because obviously I will not remember it. So we started off with a 8-man tag. So this was the Don Callis family, who I think their entrance like almost lasted as long as the card. So that was Josh Alexander and Hechicero and Leo Rush and Andretti. And then they were facing someone who is known to New Japan fans, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, and we had our first New Japan presence, which was El Desperado and Yuya Uemura. Now, the pop that El Desperado got was insane. That the fact that he's not on the main card, everyone likes to push, is because he's on Japanese commentary. Because the IWGP Junior Champion, that's all he's good for. The match itself was fine. I feel like there was too much of a focus on like whatever beef's going on between the opponents. Despy and Uemura got some really good wrestling in. I feel like again it was more focused on maybe Kyle O'Reilly, but it was good. Uemura got the pin in the end. It's quite funny. I saw someone, and I think it must have been a joke, but they're like, oh my god, look at like TK pushing Uemura more than New Japan did, because obviously he got the pin. Getting a pin, I think he got a pin over Andretti. Uemura getting a pin on the pre-show against someone who would be counted as a junior heavyweight. I mean, okay, New Japan, we've discussed this in my G1 review and stuff about pushing the younger generation, but Uemura did quite well actually in the G1. And he has pinned juniors before. Like, he's in the pre-show, doesn't matter. And then there was some after-match ramblings which saw Kyle O'Reilly, so like the Don Callis family, so it's like Rocky and Lance Archer, who are ringside, get involved and do some shenanigans. And then hilariously, it was mostly against Kyle O'Reilly, the fellow, his bestie, Tomohiro Ishii, made an entrance. You can almost tell about like the sense of urgency that Ishii has for a match and how he walks down to the ring. His friend was getting beaten up in the middle of the ring. Ishii was strolling, he was just casually doing it, and then he hit a really cool brainbuster on Lance Archer, who is huge, by the way. So that had a great pop. Loved it. Yeah, that was, I think, the most New Japan style you had in one match. Because obviously there was Despy and Uemura, which was great to see, and then Ishii came at the end. It was a decent match. We then had the second one, so this didn't have any New Japan representation, but it was something close to me. So we had a trios match, which saw Ricochet and GOA facing Michael Oku and Jet Speed, which is Kevin Knight and Speedball. I guess technically it is New Japan because Kevin Knight is New Japan. But this was so cool. I've watched Speedball and Mike Bailey since I started watching The Independents. One of my gripes about them is that they don't wear shoes. But again, that's just something small. That's just my germaphobe in me. But me, the big one was watching Michael Oku. Again, there was a massive pop though in our house when Amira came out. She looked absolutely stunning. But I've been watching Michael Oku for years. Literally, I watched him about 2 weeks ago at the Rev Pro show. And to see him come from, like, again, one of the staples of the British independent scene, especially after everything that went down with NXT UK and stuff, and he's still at the top of the game. To see him now at the O2 at AEW was huge. And there was one spot which is kind of scary where he flew out and landed on the floor, and it looked like there was meant to be people there. That was Michael Oku do Michael Oku things, and it did terrify the shit out of me, and I screamed to the point where mum was like, yeah, you need to calm down. I was like, I'm sorry. But yeah, this was a cool match. Really I mean, most of the people there probably knew who Michael Oku was, and obviously it's always great to see Jet Speed, but for people watching online, it was a great platform for Oku. It was a bit sad because obviously someone mentioned that who was there. They said that the energy dropped a bit and they realised that actually Oku was getting pinned. But yeah, it was great. Ricochet won, made sense. Big AEW star, but yeah, it was cool. We then had an 8-woman tag match that had the Triangle of Madness and Megan Bayne facing Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander, Hartley Cameron and Queen Aminata. I know of some of these women, and actually it's sad that it was on the pre-show, because you could have had a match like this, have so much more time and stuff, and put them on the main show to show women. But it was great. All the women were so dynamic. I always joke that the Triangle of Madness are like my spirit animals, because I like feel them on an emotional level. But this was cool. At the end, I think it was Queen Aminata and Tekla who just like fought their way out the back. That then created implications later on. But this was a very cool match. The women were all extremely badass, and the crowds were loving it. So yeah, it was great. And then we ended on more Bullet Club. I told you, more New Japan. It was for the Trios Championship. So it was the Samoa Joe, Shibata and Powerhouse Hobb facing the War Dogs, Clark Connors, Drilla Maloney and Robbie X. So obviously Shibata's there, that's amazing, but again, we have the New Japan representation, in particular for Drilla and Robbie X, 2 British guys. They, similar to Michael Oku, have been huge on the British scene over the past few years, and it would have been amazing for them. But what I personally love, and if you're a New Japan fan, you will understand, the interactions between Shibata and Clark Connors. This was probably the most of it. That made me really happy, of like, even like at the end, after the champion retained, obviously, Shibata just choking out Clark. Obviously, Clark Connors was the inaugural LA Dojo, and if anyone watched that really cool documentary that Shibata sort of took people around and gave an insight into the LA Dojo, it meant so much more, because you see how far these LA Dojo guys have come. So it was really nice, and it was great to see the dynamic. I mean, it was obviously clear that the Bullet Club weren't going to win, not just because obviously it's an AEW title, but you had basically 2 juniors, Clark and Robbie X with Drilla, and then 3 like basically super heavyweights. So, but it was a great match. I loved seeing it. I was kind of sad, but I hope that it gave people enough of like an introduction to the Bullet Club War Dogs if you don't know, and if all you saw was like Gabe Kidd. So yeah. We then got on to the main card. I'm going to rush quickly through this. Like I said, if you want a full review, loads of people do it. I'm focusing on New Japan here. So, actually, the fun thing is we started off with a New Japan match. We had, I feel like this was right. I don't know if I'm saying this in completely the wrong order, so please tell me if I'm wrong here. So, we had the match, which obviously is New Japan. It was the TNT Championship. Kyle Fletcher, ex-New Japan, but we do love you, Kyle, still, facing Hiromu Takahashi. Now, what's interesting is actually Walker Stewart arrived in the UK and only did like 3 matches. 2 matches actually. He commentated the New Japan, so this one and then the Zack one. I want to give a massive shout out to Walker. So I understand that like Hiromu was quite a lot. It was kind of weird though at the start they were calling him Takahashi, and I think it's once they realised that Walker was calling him Hiromu then they changed it. I feel like they were focusing too much on Hiromu being weird. They were like comparing him to Darby Allin, which don't do that. But they were like, oh, he's so mad, why is he laughing like that? But Walker beautifully turned everything around, and while they were going about how he's weird, how he's unpredictable, well no, Hiromu is one of the best. He's one of the most legendary wrestlers in New Japan, former IWGP Junior Champion, former best. He was bringing everything back to say Hiromu is not just a weird person, and this match was phenomenal. Kyle did not take Hiromu lightly. There were moments where Kyle seemed like in fear of Hiromu, and like I said, especially there were moments where Hiromu was like getting hit and hit and hit, and he was just like laughing it off, and that's just Hiromu. And even though he's a junior heavyweight, you got to know that he has never really been constrained by weight classes, as shown by like last year he was in the heavyweight world tag league and he picked up pins over heavyweights. Hiromu is someone who, rather than like, because people always say he needs to move up to the heavyweight division, Hiromu wants to show that you can do everything as a junior. He wants to battle for all the belts. He wants to main event as a junior. So yeah, this match was a great showcase of Hiromu as a person, but also how amazing Kyle has been. Like, I remember watching a really like a Kyle with like a half the head mohawk back in Rev Pro, and he faced Jay White because Chris Brooks couldn't do it, and then like this is like 7 years on and he's on one of the biggest stages. So yeah, it made me very emotional as a fan. But yeah, this was a great match. Kyle obviously retained, but this show, I mean, I'd love to see Hiromu go for more Never belts, you know, like the Never title and stuff, and win it, because I think he'd be great at that. Okay, I realised that actually I missed out a match, and I found the actual like card here. So they started off with a special tag match. So it saw Edge and Christian facing, he's not called Luchasaurus anymore, but Kip Sabian and Luchasaurus. This was a fine match. It was a really big pop, obviously, for the fans in the UK to see Edge and have Metalingus and the whole history. For me, it was a shocker to see Kip Sabian on the main card. Very cool, though, because obviously Kip Sabian, born and bred in the UK. So that was cool. Fine match. I thought it was going to set up some sort of heel turn, but yeah, it was cool. Like I said, I'm not going to focus too much on those, but I did realise, I was like, I think I'm missing out a match that didn't do it. So yeah, that was the one. We then obviously had Hiromu facing Kyle, which I just spoke about. Right, so then we had a fatal 4-way. So this was for Mercedes Moné's TBS Championship. It was Mercedes facing Persephone from CMLL. Alex Windsor, see from the UK, but she's now signed to AEW. And Bozilla, who is a 21-year-old German from Stardom, who this was my first time seeing her. This was a phenomenal match. So Mercedes has like 9 belts now. She retained this, but actually it was the impact. Mercedes let all the women shine. So Bozilla, I think, like people said the internet, she came away with probably tens of thousands of new fans because she is phenomenal. Like, so there's a thing when you're slightly, like when you're known for being tall and big, that's all your whole thing, but she had this charisma. And I love how we saw Persephone and Alex Windsor working together. Alex, obviously, she got a huge pop. People were chanting her name. I think we were all quite shocked that she didn't get the win. But this was cool because you had the possibilities of these multi-man matches for a title to sometimes get a bit boring and repetitive, and there's like awkward moments. But this was great because all 4 women in the ring are so different. So this was great. Sasha retained. I don't know how I feel about her holding all these belts. I guess it helps all the companies she's done it. For example, I think she recently won a Scottish belt. But it'll be interesting to see who will be able to dethrone her, because I know that a lot of people had hopes on Alex Windsor. We then had the, I guess the second and the fellow only match that was specifically Forbidden Door, and this was Zack Sabre Jr., IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, facing Nigel McGuinness. There was a lot of mixed reactions to this because it feels weird because Nigel's obviously not an active wrestler, and for a lot of us we thought that maybe Zack deserved more. He deserved higher on the card, but actually this worked perfectly. It's like a dream match. Zack has always been vocal about his admiration for Nigel McGuinness. Nigel, one of the top guys in the British independent scene, did so much for it as he was coming up in it. And this was a technical masterclass. I was worried because I believe Daniel Garcia was at ringside, and there were some moments where I was like, I think there might be interference. Also the fact that, I don't know, let me guys know, on the stream, Zack's pants looked like red or blood orange, so that got me confused. But actually, this match was beautiful. Again, Walker doing great of hyping up Zack throughout. They were on very equal footing. They both were very technical, but they're both very good. Like, I think at one point they were like, oh, I think Nigel has the upper hand with like the uppercuts, but actually like Zack is so proficient with his striking game. Like, he obviously raised in the UK independent scene and went to Noah and then Suzuki-gun. He could do everything. And this meant that this match had so many shades of light and dark. It wasn't just a technical match or a striking match. It was just the epitome of everything that is good to be British. Now, I know that some people might not like that style of match. It's not high-flying dynamic and it's not based on strength. But this is what the British independent scene was based on. And to have 2 guys who have done so much for the British scene and are now living their own path, whether it's like Zack in Japan or Nigel doing AEW commentary, it was a special moment for all this, and you could feel it in the room, like it was electric. I think I was slightly worried because towards the end there was a moment with Garcia and I was like, this might mean that Nigel wins, because I thought it was going to be interference. Zack Sabre Jr. won. He gave a sign of respect to Nigel, and I believe it was Nigel's dad at ringside, but it was a very nice match. It's slightly weird that it was so low down. People have said this, and again, this was like one of the only matches that was AEW versus New Japan. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, and it was such a big thing for it to happen at the O2. We then had the tag team championships. I'm not going to dwell on this. This was Brodido facing the Hurt Syndicate facing FTR. So the champions going into it were the Hurt Syndicate. It was fine. Not really my cup of tea, but Brodido came out on top, which was a very surprise. Brody King is a beast. He is insane. It was great to watch. So you might wonder why I'm glazing over this. I'm already on like 15 minutes of just chatting to you guys. And I just kind of wanted, there's like obviously the main event that we want to focus on, so we'll go for that. We then had Swerve facing Okada for I believe it was he's got the Unified Championship. Kind of just put out Okada with brown hair is something we should have seen in New Japan because I'm obsessed with it. But this was a great match. Okada is kind of weird. He's not been having as many matches as he would in New Japan. And I am very much on the fence of Okada being in the Don Callis family. Just generally, the Don Callis family is massive and they've got all these beefy men and I get it. But this was a really cool match. Swerve Strickland is an amazing wrestler. He is very dynamic. He's unafraid of everything. And this balances with Okada, who seems to have a more serious stance here. Now I find it quite funny that he still goes for this Rainmaker pose, but he always sticks a middle finger up. I'm like, one day we will get that Rainmaker pose back. Interestingly, on the first watch I missed the ending because I had to go and pick up a delivery. We'd ordered food and because like obviously it was quite like, if anyone knows, I was out the whole day, so I was like, I just want something to eat while I'm watching wrestling. But yeah, it was a great match. Make sure you go and watch it. At the end, Wardlaw came back, but that's not what we are here for. After Wardlaw made his return from injury, teaming with the Don Callis family, Takeshita came out, our G1 winner, and he was staring down Wardlaw. Could this be a heel, like a babyface turn? Because obviously Takeshita is a heel. But with everything going on with the IWGP title, I think that it's just been literally announced that Narita is the next challenger, and then whoever wins between Narita and Zack at the Road to Destruction will face Takeshita at King of Pro Wrestling. So very similar to what Zack did last year. So that will be interesting to watch. Great match. Make sure you go and watch it. And the next one was Toni Storm versus, I was going to call her Athena then, but it's not Athena. It is Athena, sorry, I was going to call her Ember Moon. But again, if you don't have time to watch everything, watch this one. Toni Storm is legendary. She came out, there were so many things that her look could have been inspired by. Vivienne Westwood, somebody saw something from Hunger Games. It was all very magnificent. But at the end of the day, Toni Storm is so proficient in the ring. Athena was trying to like heal it up. She was trying to get the heat from the crowds because like Toni did so much in the UK independent scene. So she's basically like one of us. She is our wrestler. And between the two of them, the dynamic was so interesting. So Athena had Billy Starks on the outside. So obviously by her sort of distracting things, this allowed Athena to get the one-up on Toni. And actually I was quite worried because Athena seemed to have control for most of this match. I was actually really surprised when Toni got the win. But please, guys, if you go and watch one, like a match that's not New Japan, that's not going to New Japan, guys, go and watch this one because this is amazing. And I don't know who's going to beat Toni. I think she's timeless, she's fabulous, she's amazing. She is Toni Storm. We then got on to I believe the semi-main event. This was, I'm not going to do this. So this was Hangman Page versus MJF. Like I said, I want to really focus on the main event, so I'm going to quickly go over this. This was confusing as hell. MJF had a contract. But then this was like, if you did anything that got you disqualified, then you'd win the title. But then they were like doing DQ stuff all the time. It was more confusing than a House of Torture match. Personally, it wasn't for me. Hangman Page retained. It was fine. I was still very confused at the end. But we are here for the Steel Cage match, which saw the teams of Darby Allin, Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. I know the weirdest. Versus the Death Riders, so all those guys, the Young Bucks, Claudio Castagnoli, John Moxley, and Gabe Kidd, who decided, I know, I got injured with a knee injury and the G1, so what's my first match going to be? A fucking Steel Cage match. Fucking madman, isn't he? Now, I just want to say, so going into this, I was extremely worried about Tanahashi because the man is on, like, no knees anyway. But can I say, the man took, like, 5 bumps in this entire match. Didn't have anything dangerous. Like, at one point, he was getting on a ladder. And, I mean, it was bizarre in 2025 to see Kota Ibushi and Tanahashi in a match anyway together after everything that went down. But Tanahashi was climbing this ladder, and Kota was like, and this is so weird because Kota, you know, he's so crazy. Kota was like, you should probably get down, Tanahashi. Like, okay, I get it. But the team, so the babyfaces were so good. Like, at one point, they were going after Tana, and Ospreay literally covered Tanahashi with his bloody body. There was a funny moment, so the Young Bucks have got all this shtick going on. They thought they were bringing out thumbtacks, but they were gummy bears. There are obviously some crazy moments. Darby Allin getting chucked into the cage. There was, Ospreay was bleeding, like, there was, like, my mum was watching, she's like, I love Ospreay and Tanahashi. She couldn't watch it. and there was barbed wire tables, huge tables. They went outside. Gabe Kidd, man, has a match with Shingo Takagi coming up for the title. He decided to jump off a steel cage with Darby Allin. That's insane. But actually, so as much as I don't like blood, so I was a bit queasy throughout this, and I think I was spending most of it hoping that Tanahashi was not going to kill himself, and he didn't, so that was fine. What was amazing to me is how well everyone interacted with each other, and can I say, Tanahashi took like 6 bumps and he got the win. Hiroshi Tanahashi got the win in a steel cage match in his last ever match in the UK, and I couldn't be happier. It was interesting. So at the end there was like, so Ospreay said he's needed surgery, so I think they were trying to find an angle to allow him to have that surgery. So after the babyfaces won, they shut the cage when all of the rest of the team were out, and the Death Riders started beating up Ospreay more. So I think that's going to lead to an angle of Ospreay going and taking a leave of absence, which is kind of weird because they've just announced 2 shows in the UK, including one in Manchester in December, like 15 minutes from my house. Because you guys know that like the arena is very near to me, so I was very excited about that. But again, it was obviously the angle. It was quite funny because like Kenny and Ibushi and Darby were trying to come back to help, and I could see Tanahashi like probably should be leaving now. But I was very concerned about this match, mainly for Tanahashi, but actually the lack of Tanahashi in this, he was still very impactful. Thank you, AEW, for actually giving us something. You might have had Hiromu lose and a lack of New Japan style, but you had Hiroshi Tanahashi pick up the pin in the main event. So I will accept that. Actually, it was quite enjoyable. I'm still very queasy on these kind of matches and blood and stuff, but it was the perfect way to end the night. So overall, actually, despite being very long, and I say very long, I've sat through 2 shows at the Tokyo Dome, which were very long, but this felt like forever. It was a good show. There were some very strong matches. Like I said, if you want matches to watch Steel Cage match as a New Japan fan. Watch Tony versus Athena. Watch Zack versus Nigel McGuinness. Watch Okada versus Strickland. And watch Hiromu versus Kyle. But I still have an issue with the whole idea. Like I saw on the screen, it kept saying AEW times New Japan. For Forbidden Door, that's not what it is. You can't tell me that it's a New Japan and AEW combined show when you had 5 guys on the pre-show and only 4 guys in the main show from New Japan. So again, this was no criticism on AEW. Thank you for giving some of my guys a spotlight, I guess I should say. Especially, you get a shout out for the main event and Tanahashi winning. But you need to reevaluate the concept of Forbidden Door going forward. So yeah, that was my review. We've had the G1, had stuff. Now we're focusing on New Japan. We've got the Destruction show coming up and then Super Junior Tag League. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Obviously, let me know at wrestling_chat on social media. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts were on all the matches. After the show now, what's your thoughts on the Forbidden Door concept? What were your top matches of the night which didn't really hit the mark? Let me know. Remember, hit like, share and subscribe. I will be back now with full New Japan content. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the show and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon. Bye!